They didn't even lie about it. That's what got me. They just said it outright. "We bought the play box with your pension, Grandma." Smiling, proud, like I should be impressed they managed to snag the newest console before it sold out. I stood there with a bag of groceries in my hand and a quiet buzzing in my ears. I'd given my daughter the money last month, thinking it was for a new water heater. "It's leaking, Mom, and we just can't afford repairs right now." She'd sounded so tired. And I had enough. A bit from my pension, a bit from the emergency fund, scraped together without thinking twice. I'd done that for years, without complaint, without conditions. I even added a note to the envelope, asking her not to stress too much. "I'm always here," I wrote. That used to be true. Now I was watching my grandkids unwrap a box bigger than the heater was supposed to be. Their little faces were flushed with excitement. And to be fair, the youngest one, Casey, did look at me and say, "Thank you, Grandma," before running back to set it up. I didn't say anything then, just stood in the hallway, cold groceries against my hip, watching them all move past me like I wasn't even there. My daughter, Diane, didn't meet my eyes. She looked guilty, I'll give her that. But guilt without change is just noise. That night, I didn't sleep well. The heater story circled around my brain like a bad song, the kind that gets stuck in your head no matter how hard you try to shake it off. I lay there, staring at the dark, remembering all the little lies over the years. The time she needed help with daycare, the emergency dentist bill, the so-called school fundraiser that turned out to be a girls' weekend in Palm Beach. I'm not naive. I wasn't born yesterday. But I always told myself, they're young, they're struggling, I'm doing okay. That was my excuse. Over and over. The next morning, I checked my bank balance. $228.17. My pension would arrive in a week, and the electricity bill was due in 3 days. I'd never been late paying a bill in my life. When Diane came by that afternoon, without knocking, as usual, she was holding a paper bag from some organic store downtown. "Brought you some almond flour," she said, setting it on the counter like it was a peace offering. "Casey wants to bake those cookies you make." I nodded, didn't speak. She looked at me for a beat, then turned to leave. "Oh, and the kids might stay over this weekend," she added casually. "Me and Alex need a little time to ourselves." A little time to themselves. Bought with my groceries, my money, my quiet weekends. When the door closed, I finally sat down. The kitchen chair creaked under me like it was sighing in sympathy. I stared at that bag of almond flour, thinking about the price. $6 for a pound. Probably more now. And I thought, I just bought her groceries too. They didn't steal from me. They didn't have to. I'd handed them everything. The heater didn't exist. The playbox did. I stood up and walked to the small cabinet where I keep my paperwork. I'm not disorganized, not like Diane. Everything's in labeled folders: utilities, savings, house insurance, pension. And one I labeled long ago but hadn't opened in years. June's copy. My copy. Just in case. In that folder was a thin sheet of paper. The deed to the house. My name on every line. No cosigner, no caveats, no shared ownership. Just mine. A tremor passed through me, but it wasn't fear. It was something older. Older than motherhood. Older than sacrifice. It was clarity. I sat back down with that paper and looked around my kitchen. Yellow walls, fading a bit. The clock that's ticked the same way since 1982. My husband's chair, still tucked under the table like he might come back and sit in it one day. And I realized this was the last space that was mine. Everything else, my money, my time, my weekends, belonged to someone else. Until now. I folded the deed carefully, put it back in the folder, and stood up. I didn't know exactly what I'd do yet, but something had started moving. A gear long rusted into place was beginning to turn. They'd spent my pension on their toys. They'd lied without lying. They'd assumed I wouldn't notice, or if I did, I'd smile and let it go. They were wrong. I didn't come from much. My father worked in a mill, my mother cleaned houses. I grew up knowing the worth of every dime. When I married Walter, we had nothing but a second-hand couch and a frying pan with a loose handle. But we had a plan. We'd save. Slowly, patiently, like stacking bricks one at a time. We raised 2 children. Diane was the older, sensitive, dramatic, smart in the ways that made teachers sigh with frustration. My son, Todd, was quieter. Moved out at 18, never really looked back. Now he sends a postcard at Christmas. That's enough for me. When Walter got sick, lungs, the kind of sick that drags on and takes pieces of a person month by month, I took over, cared for him, ran the household, took up part-time shifts at the grocery store down the road. We sold his car, cut cable, switched to off-brand everything. No complaints. That's what you do when you love someone. When he passed, Diane was still living at home. Her first husband had just left her with 2 kids and a mountain of debt. She came back with bags and boxes and a voice full of tears, and I said, "Of course, stay as long as you need." That was 13 years ago. They moved out eventually, into a modest house across town. Modest, except for the mortgage that kept growing. I helped with the down payment. "Just a loan," she'd said. I never saw a dollar of it back, but I didn't ask. Pride's a funny thing. It doesn't always look like stubbornness. Sometimes it looks like silence. I kept helping. Winter coats, summer camps, birthday parties. Casey needed braces. Oliver wanted to join the robotics club. Some expensive kit was involved. I always found a way. My pension, Walter's life insurance, a few clever investments I made when I was younger, all of it went into keeping them afloat. Every time I brought it up, gently, carefully, Diane would say, "We're trying, Mom. You have no idea how hard it is for us right now." She was right. I didn't know. Because she never told me the truth. She just took. Sometimes I wonder if it's my fault. If I made it too easy. If I blurred the line between love and servitude. When you say yes for too long, people forget that you're allowed to say no. Last week, I went through my check register. I still write checks. I like the physical record of it. $450 to the dentist. $200 for Oliver's school trip. $98 to cover a temporary shortfall in their water bill. Another $80 for groceries. In 1 month, I'd given away more than half of my pension. It was never just one thing. It was 1,000 tiny yeses that added up to a quiet erasure of self. My friend Edna once said, "They'll take until you have nothing left but your bones, and then they'll ask for those too." I laughed when she said it. I'm not laughing now. That evening, I found an old envelope labeled Christmas Fund. Walter and I used to put spare cash into it all year long so we could splurge in December without guilt. There was still $63 in it. I took it out and held it like something sacred. That was money we saved for joy. I thought about the playbox, about how Oliver had grinned when he said, "It was like $600, but totally worth it." I thought about Diane's eyes darting away when I asked how the water heater was holding up. I tucked the envelope into my purse. The next day, I went to the grocery store and bought what I wanted. Cheese, not the cheap one, a small carton of blueberries, a magazine with a crossword I liked. Then I did something I hadn't done in over a decade. I walked into a hair salon. "Just a trim," I said, but the stylist, a kind girl named Cheryl, talked me into a soft bob and a few gentle highlights. When she turned the chair and handed me the mirror, I barely recognized myself. I looked awake. On the walk home, I passed a realtor's office. A flyer in the window advertised rental properties, short-term studio units, all utilities included, quiet neighborhood. I stood there longer than I should have, something turning over in my mind. What would it feel like to live in a space that was entirely mine again? That night, Diane called. "Do you think you could help cover our internet bill this month? The kids are using it for school, and Alex had to cut his hours again." I looked at the deed again, sitting on the table in front of me. Still mine, still untouched. "I'll think about it," I said. That was the first time I'd said that in years. There was no fight, no screaming match, no grand confrontation, just quiet distance. After I told Diane I'd think about the internet bill, she didn't call for 3 days. I didn't call either. I spent the time cleaning out drawers, the kind you forget exist until you need to find a paperclip or a screwdriver. I found 3 expired coupons, a broken flashlight, a postcard from Todd that I'd somehow never opened. "Mom, beach is beautiful. Met someone. Hope you're well. T." That was all it said. I set it on the counter next to the bowl of oranges. Just seeing his handwriting did something strange to my chest. It wasn't love, exactly. It was the memory of love. On the 4th day, I logged into my online banking. I don't do it often. The passwords confuse me, and the layout always seems to change. But I managed. I printed out the last 6 months of transactions. Sat at the kitchen table with a highlighter and a red pen. It took 2 hours. $38.75. Streaming platform I don't watch $74. Alex's auto insurance $133.50. Casey's sports equipment store $99. Youth coding course for Oliver $208. Diane's credit card minimum payment. That one made my hand shake. Not because of the amount, but because of the note in the transfer. "Thanks again, Mom. You're a lifesaver." I highlighted it in red. All in all, I'd sent them over $200 in the past half year. That's not counting groceries or little emergencies that came up and were paid in cash. And still, Diane once said to me, "It's not like we're living off you, Mom. We're just trying to get by." But that's exactly what they were doing. Getting by on me. I thought about the play box again. The way Casey had torn the wrapping like it owed him something. The way Diane had quietly stood back, letting me watch them celebrate with money that was supposed to keep my heat running. The thing about kindness, it stretches. It stretches and stretches until one day it snaps back and leaves a welt. That evening, I went to the drawer where I kept my banking information. I pulled out the folder marked transfers and took stock. There were 8 active automatic payments to Diane's household. One by one, I canceled each of them. Electricity, canceled. Water, canceled. Insurance, canceled. 2 subscriptions I'd never used, canceled. The last one was for their home security system. I hesitated. Then canceled that, too. If they wanted protection, they could start by protecting their relationship with me. The next morning, I walked to the post office and mailed a letter. Yes, a physical letter. Diane wouldn't read an email. She's too busy, too distracted. But a letter in her mailbox would be impossible to ignore. I kept it short. "Dear Diane, I've reviewed my finances and realized I've been covering several household costs for you and your family. At this stage in my life, I need to refocus on my own needs and security. As such, I've canceled all recurring payments. I trust you'll understand. With love, Mom. I didn't explain. I didn't justify. I didn't accuse. Let the silence do the work. For the next 2 days, nothing happened. No calls, no messages. I wondered if she hadn't seen it yet, or if she was too angry to reply. On the 3rd day, I received a text. Really? You couldn't even talk to me first? I stared at the message for a long time. It was from Diane, but it didn't sound like the daughter I raised. It sounded like someone used to withdrawals, not conversations. I didn't answer. Later that afternoon, the doorbell rang. I knew it would. I put on the kettle before I answered. Diane stood on the porch, arms crossed. Her face was flushed, not with heat, but with something deeper. Her voice was low, controlled. "You're punishing us." "No," I said. "I'm prioritizing myself." She pushed past me into the kitchen like she still lived here. I let her. She always needed to feel in control. "I don't understand," she said, pacing. "You've always helped. Why now?" "Because I finally realized what helping has cost me." She stopped. "We're family. Family doesn't mean I fund your lifestyle while skipping my own medication." That landed. I saw it in the way her eyes narrowed, not with anger, but with comprehension. The kind that stings. "You're serious," she said. "Yes." "And what? We're just supposed to figure it all out on our own?" I blinked. "Isn't that what being an adult means?" We stood in silence. The kettle whistled. I didn't move to silence it. Finally, Diane exhaled, long and bitter. "The kids won't understand." "They don't have to. Not right away." She picked up her purse. "Well, thanks for the heads up." I almost said, "You had 13 years of heads up," but I let her leave instead. That night, for the first time in months, I slept through the whole night. The message came at 6:12 a.m., long before my first cup of coffee. "You ruined Casey's birthday." No hello, no love, Diane, just the accusation, dropped like a brick through my window. I stared at it for a while, not angry, just tired. The kind of tired that lives deep in your spine. The kind that isn't cured by sleep. Casey turned 10 that day. I hadn't been invited to the party. A week earlier, when I told Diane I wouldn't be paying for the decorations or the rental bounce house, she said, "Fine, we'll handle it." I guess handling it didn't include buying a second cake or party favors for the whole class. I'd bought Casey a book, a real one, hardback, beautifully illustrated. He liked stories once, before everything had a screen. I wrapped it in brown paper and tied it with string. Old-fashioned, like me. But I never got to give it to him. The day of the party, I waited. I set the book on the kitchen counter in plain view, like a promise to myself. If he came by, I'd be ready. He didn't. And now, in the dim light of early morning, Diane was blaming me for the child's disappointment. That's the problem with people who never hear no. When they finally do, they treat it like betrayal. I didn't reply to her message. Instead, I poured myself coffee and sat in the sunroom. The light was soft. Filtered through the sheer curtains Walter installed himself 20 years ago. He'd called them too pretty for a laundry room. I'd told him that was exactly the point. I watched the street for a while. Quiet neighborhood, same as always. Mrs. Hightower walked her yappy little dog past my window at 7:15 sharp. Mr. Franklin's sprinkler sputtered to life at 7:30. My own lawn looked a little dry, but I didn't mind. I liked when things grew on their own terms. That morning, I made a list. Not groceries, not chores. Just a list titled, What is mine? My house, my time, my pension, my voice, my story. I looked at those words for a long time. Then I added one more. My no saying no still felt foreign in my mouth, but every time I said it, I felt something loosen in my chest. Later that day, Alex came by, unannounced. My son-in-law had never been one for pleasantries. He knocked twice and then walked right in, holding his phone like it was proof of a crime. "Look," he said, showing me a bank app screen. "We're late on utilities now. You just cut us off with no warning." "You had 13 years of warning," I said, not getting up. His jaw twitched. "You know what I mean?" I didn't answer. He exhaled through his nose, like a bull trying not to charge. "We're stretched thin, June. I'm working extra shifts. Diane's got the kids. It's just, timing's bad." I nodded slowly. "It usually is. What do you want from us? An apology? Fine. We're sorry." I looked at him then. Really looked. A man in his 40s, hair thinning, shirt creased, eyes tired. Not cruel, not evil. Just entitled. Like the world owed him something because it hadn't yet crushed him completely. "I don't want an apology, Alex. I want boundaries." He frowned. "Boundaries?" "Yes. The kind grown people respect." He rubbed the back of his neck. "So, that's it? You're just out?" "I'm not out," I said, soft but steady. "I'm just not a faucet anymore." He left without slamming the door. That was progress, I suppose. That night, I opened Casey's gift. Not the book. No, I left that untouched. I mean the real gift. The lesson. The proof that saying no wouldn't kill me. That I could survive the storm of silence and side eyes and guilt trips. That I could be the mother who didn't show up with a check and still be okay. I lit a candle in the kitchen, not for any reason, just because it smelled like oranges and summer and I wanted to. I made a small dinner. I used the good dishes. At 9:42 p.m., I got another message. "Oliver's upset too. He says you don't care about them anymore." Funny how money and love get tangled in people's minds. I didn't respond. I turned off my phone, finished my tea, and went to bed. The book for Casey stayed on the counter, still wrapped, still waiting. The bank manager's name was Lillian. Mid-50s, sharp haircut, calm voice. The kind of woman who could deliver bad news in a way that made you feel oddly reassured. I liked her immediately. "I want to review all linked payments," I said, handing over my ID. She didn't flinch, didn't ask questions, just tapped on her keyboard and turned the screen toward me. A neat list appeared, rows and rows of auto payments, transfers, subscriptions, credit line authorizations. Some I recognized. Others made my stomach turn. $64 monthly to a learning platform, she read aloud. Looks like it's for someone named O. Renner. "Oliver," I said. "And here, premium insurance on a leased SUV?" "Alex's car," I nodded. I watched as she scrolled. A few charities, ones I did support, but not at those amounts. A gym membership, streaming services, school fees. "None of these are in your name," Lillian observed gently. "No, they're not." She paused. "Would you like to deactivate them?" "All of them," I said. "Except my phone bill and power. Everything else goes." "And the linked users?" she asked delicately. "There are two authorized, Diane Renner and Alexander Renner." "Remove both," I said. I thought the words might feel bitter. Instead, they felt like cutting a cord that had grown too tight. She nodded. "I'll need your signature on a few documents. I'll also make a note to monitor your account for any new access attempts." I liked how she said that. Access attempts. As if I were finally being treated like something worth protecting. While she printed the forms, I looked around the office. Beige walls, certificates in frames, a little pot of artificial lavender on the windowsill. Outside, the parking lot shimmered in the noon sun. Ordinary things. But for the first time in years, I felt like I was sitting in a room where things changed. I signed the papers. Lillian slid one final document across the desk. This is just a summary of the deactivated services. You may want to keep it for your records. I folded it neatly and placed it in my purse. On the way out, I stopped at the small ATM machine and printed a balance slip. My account number at the top. My name alone. No one else drawing from it. The number wasn't large, but for once, it was entirely mine. I walked 2 blocks to the lawyer's office next. Not the fancy kind. Just a small setup above the post office with squeaky stairs and coffee that smelled more hopeful than good. The receptionist looked up. Ms. Vaughn? Mrs. Vaughn, I corrected gently. Widowed, but still Mrs. He met me 5 minutes later. Young, maybe 30, with glasses and a face that hadn't yet learned how to hide disappointment. But he was polite. I want to review my will, I said, sitting down. Certainly, he replied, opening a file. You have one on record here from 2013. Everything goes to your daughter and her children. I nodded. That was before I understood the value of clauses. He blinked. Clauses? I leaned forward. Conditions, protections, things that make sure a will is about love, not just entitlement. He didn't smile, but something in his eyes flickered. Understood. We spent an hour revising it. I set up a modest trust for each grandchild, available only when they turned 25 and only if enrolled in school or full-time work. No early withdrawals, no parental access. And Diane? I left her the house, but only if she stayed in good standing as a tenant for 5 consecutive years. If she doesn't qualify? The lawyer asked. It goes to the local women's shelter, I said. That made him pause. Do you volunteer there? No, I said, but I might. Seems like a better use of time than paying for video games and ungrateful silence. When I left the office, I felt 20 pounds lighter. Not younger, just cleaner inside. I stopped for a sandwich at a cafe I used to like. It had changed hands since Walter and I used to come here. Fewer pies, more quinoa. But the tea was still strong. As I ate, I thought about everything I'd done that day. It wasn't revenge. Not really. It was administration. Housekeeping. The kind no one thanks you for, but that keeps the floor from collapsing under your feet. My phone buzzed. A message from Diane. Why is the bank saying we don't have access? What's going on, Mom? I didn't reply. I didn't even open it all the way. Just turned the screen face down and sipped my tea. She'd find out soon enough. They came as a pair this time, Diane and Alex. Not yelling, not even angry, just determined. Like people who'd decided they were owed something and came to collect it. They knocked, which surprised me. That alone told me they sensed the shift. I didn't rush to open the door. Let them wait. Let the silence fill the porch. Press into their pockets. When I finally opened it, Alex offered a tight smile. Diane didn't. Can we talk? She asked. You're already doing it, I said, stepping aside. They sat in the living room like guests, not family. That pleased me more than I wanted to admit. Diane looked around, and I could see the tension in her jaw. She hadn't really looked at this room in years. Not since she moved out and left me with boxes of forgotten things she never came back for. Alex got to the point. We're in trouble, he said. Without your help, we're behind on everything. Kids need supplies for school. Utilities are overdue. We're trying, June, but we can't catch up. Diane stared at her lap. What do you want me to do? I asked. You know what we need, Diane said, still not meeting my eyes. You've always helped. I used to, I agreed, but not anymore. Silence. Alex leaned forward. Look, we know we've taken too much. We should have been more transparent. But you cutting everything off like that? It hurt. I nodded slowly. It was supposed to. That got their attention. Diane finally looked up. So this is punishment? No, I said. This is correction. Same thing, she muttered. No, I repeated. Punishment is about revenge. Correction is about reality. I'm done pretending this is how families work. Alex tried to smile again. We're not asking for luxury, June. We're just trying to survive. I gave you 13 years of survival, I said calmly. 13 years of electric bills, school fees, grocery runs, birthday parties. I funded your life while neglecting mine. You didn't ask for help. You built your life around assuming it. Diane's shoulders slumped. So what? Now we're just strangers? No, I said. Now we're adults. I stood up, slow but steady. You can stay. In the house. But it won't be free. I'll draw up a lease. Market rate. First and last month, due by the 1st. You're kidding, Alex said. I didn't answer. Diane blinked. You're serious? You want us to pay rent? To you? Yes, I said. To me. And if we can't? Alex asked. I shrugged. You'll have 30 days. Then you'll have to find something else. They both sat frozen. Two people who'd gotten so used to me bending that they didn't know what it looked like when I stood up. This is cruel, Diane said finally, her voice cracking. You're our mother. And what have I been to you? I asked, not with anger, just genuine curiosity. Bank? Babysitter? Emergency fund? Diane looked like she might cry, but I didn't move toward her. I let her sit with it. After a long pause, Alex cleared his throat. Fine, he said. We'll figure it out. I nodded. I know you will. They stood. Diane paused by the door. We didn't mean to take advantage, she said softly. I believe that, I replied. But it doesn't change the facts. After they left, I sat in the quiet for a while. No anger, no shaking hands. Just peace. I pulled out a pad of paper and started sketching out lease terms. Rent due on the 1st, utilities not included, quiet hours after 10. Fair, not cruel, not generous, just fair. The lawyer's office smelled faintly of paper and lemon cleaner. I sat across from Mr. Fisher, a man who wore his glasses too low on his nose and blinked more than necessary when he had to say something unpleasant. He'd drawn up our will years ago, back when Walter was still around, when the house felt bigger, fuller. I want to draft a lease agreement, I told him. His eyebrows rose, but he didn't comment. He simply reached for a fresh legal pad. For who? He asked. My daughter and her husband, I said. They'll be living in part of the house, as tenants. He blinked fast, as expected. Will you be residing there too? No, I'll be moving into the carriage house out back. Smaller, simpler. It'll suit me fine. Do you want to create a formal property division? Yes, I said. The main house is theirs, for rent. I retain access to all shared utilities, and I reserve the right to enter common areas with notice. He scribbled notes. Duration of lease? 1 year to start, I said. Renewable at my discretion. Security deposit. Equal to 1 month's rent, due before keys are handed over. He looked at me over the rim of his glasses. Market rate. Precisely. He nodded. Will there be a late fee? 10%, I said. waived once per year. After that, it accumulates daily. Mr. Fisher smiled faintly. You've thought this through. I've had time. We spent the next hour reviewing clauses. Pet policy. No new animals without written approval. Maintenance responsibility, split by square footage. Guest policy. Overnight guests limited to 10 consecutive days. There was something strangely empowering about it. Not harsh, just structured. For the first time in years, I wasn't reacting. I was setting the terms. When everything was printed, I signed my copy and took another for Diane and Alex. Mr. Fisher slid a small envelope toward me. And the trust documents, he said, filed and notarized. I tucked them into my bag without ceremony. Outside, the sun was beginning to dip behind the church steeple. The sidewalk glowed gold. I walked slowly, not because of my knees this time, but because there was no need to rush. For once, the next step wasn't a burden. It was mine. At home, I packed my bedroom with calm hands. Books into boxes. Linens into bags. I left the heavy furniture. Let them deal with that if they wanted it. The carriage house had been unused for years. Walter once used it as a workshop. After he passed, it became storage. I cleared it out last week, quietly, without fanfare. There was a bed, a chair, a table. Enough. The main house echoed a little once I was done. I stood in the empty doorway of what used to be my bedroom and felt nothing. Not sadness, not anger, just stillness. The next morning, I handed Diane the lease. She took it like it was a dead fish. Alex flipped through the pages with the skeptical air of a man used to fine print he never reads. You're serious, he said. I've never been clearer. Diane looked at me, her eyes searching. So this is it now? You're just the landlord? No, I said. I'm your mother, who finally remembered that she owns the roof over your head. They didn't like it. I didn't expect them to. But they signed. I gave them until the weekend to move in. I'd already moved out. I moved into the carriage house on a Friday morning. The air smelled like sawdust and leftover summer. I opened the windows wide, let the sunlight settle on the floorboards. It was quieter here. Smaller, yes, but cleaner somehow. Not just in dust, but in energy. The space was mine. I brought only what I needed. My books, the kettle Walter gave me on our 10th anniversary, 2 quilts, 1 small radio, and the wooden chair with the blue cushion where I liked to sit and read. Everything else stayed in the main house. They arrived at noon. A rented truck pulled into the driveway. Diane in sunglasses, Alex in a gray shirt, already damp from effort. The kids weren't with them, probably at a friend's, or maybe Diane had found someone to watch them. I didn't ask. We weren't in that kind of arrangement anymore. I watched from the porch as they unloaded, boxes marked kitchen and bedroom stacked haphazardly near the front steps. A large flat-screen TV, 2 gaming consoles, and a tower of plastic storage bins labeled with the kids' names. They didn't say hello. I didn't offer help. By afternoon, they were inside. The door closed. The main house was no longer my responsibility. At dinner time, I boiled potatoes and steamed broccoli. No meat, no need. I ate in silence, radio murmuring old jazz in the corner. A hawk circled overhead outside the window, slow and certain. At 7:03 p.m., there was a knock on my door. Alex stood there, looking both sheepish and irritated. We're trying to get the Wi-Fi set up, he said. What's the network name? I don't know, I said truthfully. I canceled the account last week. The new setup's up to you. He blinked. So we're not sharing? No, I said. Your tenants, utilities are your responsibility. He let out a short breath, almost a laugh. This is really happening, huh? It's been happening, I said. You're just catching up. He didn't reply, just turned and walked back to the main house. I went to bed early that night, slept better than I had in months. The next few days passed in quiet rhythm. I swept the floor each morning, read for an hour, tended to my small garden patch, just herbs and tomatoes. I made soup. I wrote a letter to an old friend I'd lost touch with. I answered no phone calls. From the main house, I heard life, but distantly. A door slamming, a faucet running, children arguing over screen time. I didn't intervene. I wasn't invited. On the 5th day, I received my first rent payment. A check slipped under the door, signed by Alex. The full amount, no note. I stared at it for a long moment. Not because of the money. It wasn't much, really. It was what it meant. They were paying. Not because I demanded, but because the rules had changed. And they knew it. That same afternoon, I received a message from Oliver. Hi, Grandma. Can I come by sometime? Just to talk. I sat with that message longer than I should have. Not because I didn't want to see him, but because I wanted to be sure he wasn't coming with empty hands and full expectations. I replied simply, of course. No gifts needed. Just you. The first month passed slowly, like honey poured on a cold morning. Thick, quiet, a little sticky with tension. I kept to myself. They kept to theirs. The check arrived on time again. Second payment. No note, no thank you. Just a folded envelope, slipped under my door. I deposited it and said nothing. On the 13th day of the second month, I found an envelope with only $850 inside. $50 short. No explanation, no apology. I waited 2 days. Then I printed the lease terms, highlighted the late fee clause in yellow, and slid it under their door. An hour later, Diane knocked. Not Alex. Her. Mom, she said, arms crossed like armor. We're in a tight spot. I thought you'd understand. I do understand, I said. That's why the grace period is 5 days. Today is day 6. She looked tired, not just physically, exhausted in the way people get when their stories stop working. It's just $50, she said. I didn't blink. Plus 5%, which brings it to $90.50 due by Friday. Seriously? She snapped. You're going to nickel and dime your own daughter? I didn't respond, just waited. She rubbed her temples, sighed, and turned back toward the house. I wasn't angry. I wasn't smug. I was resolved. It wasn't about the money. It was about the weight of always being the soft place to fall, until the fall became a crash, and I was expected to rebuild the floorboards every time. That Friday at 6:11 p.m., a white envelope appeared under my door. $92.50. Cash. I logged the receipt in my little ledger, wrote the date beside it, then went back to my tea. That weekend, Casey wandered into the yard. He looked thinner than usual, a little quieter. He kicked at the grass and stood near my garden, not touching anything. Can I help you with the tomatoes? He asked. I handed him a pair of gloves. He worked without complaint, dug small holes, patted down the soil. After 20 minutes, he asked, Why do you live out here now? I wiped my hands on a towel. I like the quiet. Mom says you're mad at us. I'm not mad, I said. Just tired of pretending things are okay when they're not. He didn't reply. Before he left, I gave him a small paper bag with cherry tomatoes and 2 cookies. One for you, one for your brother, I said. He smiled. Thanks, Grandma. That night, I heard raised voices in the main house, muffled through the walls, but I caught words. Not a hotel, and her rules, and can't keep doing this. I didn't get up, didn't eavesdrop, just sipped my tea and let the night do what it does, wrap everything in quiet. The next morning, there was a knock. Not Diane, not Alex. Oliver. "Hi," he said, awkward as always, voice deeper than I remembered. "Hi, sweetheart. Can I come in?" I opened the door and stepped aside. He sat at the table, long legs folded under him, staring at the wood grain. "It's weird," he said finally, "seeing you like this." "Like what?" "Different. Not giving all the time." I smiled softly. "Maybe I was giving too much." He shrugged. "I guess. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. For all the times I didn't say thank you. For the games, the stuff. I don't even remember half of it. But I know it wasn't free." I reached for his hand. "It's never too late to say thank you." We sat there a while. No demands, no money talk. Just quiet. And a grandson who remembered I was more than a bank account. When he left, I looked at the tomatoes in the basket by the window and thought, some things grow slower, but deeper. Mabel brought pie and a bottle of cheap wine. She always did when something had shifted in her bones, when she had that stormlight in her eyes. "I told them," she said, sliding onto my porch swing without waiting to be asked. "Told my daughter no for the first time in 15 years. I poured the wine into 2 mismatched glasses. What was the ask this time? "New kitchen counters, granite." She snorted. Said it was for resale value. I said the only thing being sold around here was my patience. I laughed, not loudly, just enough that it felt good in my throat. The wine was too sweet, but it warmed the tongue. The pie was store-bought, crust too perfect to be real, but still comforting in the way old rituals are. Mabel had been through her own slow erosion. 3 grandkids, a grown daughter who called only when bills were due, a son-in-law who seemed to think thank you was a weakness. For years, she'd floated in that same space I had, somewhere between love and obligation, quiet martyrdom dressed as care. "What changed?" I asked. She bit into a slice of pie, chewed like it was a speech. "Watched you is what? Moved out here, drew a line. Made them pay rent." She waved her fork like a wand. "You made it look clean." "It wasn't," I said. "Still isn't. Doesn't have to be. Just has to be clear." The porch creaked as we rocked in silence for a while. The sun slid low behind the neighbor's fence, casting long shadows across the grass. "Did they take it well?" I asked. "Worse than I expected. Better than I feared," she said. "Jenna called me selfish, said I was putting money above family. I told her I was finally putting myself back in the family equation." I nodded slowly. "They always say money isn't everything right after they've asked for some." Mabel raised her glass. "To selfish old women." We clinked. That night, I lay in bed and thought about how many of us there must be. Mothers, grandmothers, quiet givers with empty pockets and full calendars, living with a lifetime of swallowed no's. The next morning, Diane appeared again. No knock this time. Just her figure near the garden gate, arms folded, eyes shielded behind sunglasses too big for her face. "Can we talk?" she asked. I nodded, and she followed me to the porch. I poured coffee. No wine this time. This wasn't that kind of visit. "Rent's due again soon," she said carefully. "We're struggling." I waited. "I know what you'll say," she added quickly. "That you're not a bank. That we should have planned better." I didn't say it. But the kids, she stopped. They don't understand. They don't have to, I said. They just need to learn. She rubbed her temples. I miss when things were simpler. So do I said. Back when help felt like love, not obligation. She looked at me then. Really looked. Do you hate us? That one landed harder than I expected. No, I said, and meant it. But I had to stop loving you in a way that was destroying me. She swallowed. Her voice was small. I don't know how to fix it. Start with paying what you owe, I said gently. Then maybe visit without needing anything. She nodded once and stood. She didn't hug me, but she didn't storm off either. After she left, I opened the mailbox. Inside was a card, handwritten, envelope soft with handling. From Mabel. Inside, it said, "Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors you decide when to open." The argument started at 6:45 p.m. I wasn't eavesdropping. The windows were open, and voices carried differently through autumn air. Alex's was sharp, clipped. Diane's rose in waves, first defense, then accusation, then silence. The kind of silence that bruises more than yelling ever could. I didn't catch every word, but the tone said enough. Not her house anymore. She owns it, Alex. That doesn't mean she gets to run our lives. She's not running anything. We just didn't think it through. I sat by my window, needle in hand, mending a torn pillow seam. One stitch at a time. In, out, in, out. I'd learned long ago that some tasks are best done while the world falls apart around you. At 7:10, a door slammed. Heavy footsteps on the gravel. Alex, car keys in hand. He drove off without looking toward my porch. Diane stayed inside. I didn't go over. Not my place. Not anymore. Instead, I brewed tea. The good kind, Darjeeling, loose leaf, steeped just right. Sat on the porch with it in both hands. Warm. Grounding. At 7:38, a soft knock. Diane. No sunglasses, no armor. "Do you have a minute?" she asked. I moved aside and she sat in the other chair. The one Walter used to sit in when he wanted to listen more than speak. She didn't start with excuses this time. "It's not working," she said. "What isn't?" "Us. Me and Alex. Me and the kids. Me and you." She paused. "Everything." I waited. I've spent years trying to keep the illusion that we were okay. Like if I could just keep the lights on and the birthdays decorated, the rest would hold. She looked at her hands. But it's all cracked. I sipped my tea. Let her talk. "I resented you," she said softly. "Every time you said yes, I hated that I needed you. And when you said no, I hated you for reminding me I was helpless." "That's a hard place to live," I said. She nodded. "I think I broke something in us. In you." "You didn't break me," I said. "You just forgot I was a person." Silence. Then, "I used to remember. When I was little. You worked double shifts, came home smelling like bleach and coffee. But you still made pancakes on Sundays." "I remember that too," I said. "You always wanted extra syrup." She smiled faintly. "Still do." The wind picked up, stirring the leaves. The porch creaked beneath our feet. "I don't know what to ask for anymore," she said. "I used to know exactly how to get things from you. Now I just don't." "That's not a loss," I said. "That's a beginning." She looked up. Her eyes were red, but not from tears. Just tired. "Would you ever consider, I don't know, dinner sometime? No talks about money. Just dinner." "Only if you bring dessert," I said. She exhaled a laugh. Short, real. "I can manage that." Before she left, she paused at the top of the porch steps. "We're still behind on rent. But I'm working on it. I mean that." I believe you. And Alex. He's not handling the shift well. Most people don't, I said. They confuse new boundaries with rejection. She nodded slowly. We're trying. It's messy. It always is, I said. But messy doesn't mean broken. She walked back to the house without looking back. I finished my tea, turned off the porch light, and sat a little longer in the dark. The knock was soft, almost uncertain. I opened the door to find Oliver standing there, hands in his jacket pockets, hair a little too long, eyes serious in a way teenage boys rarely allow themselves to be. Hey, he said. Do you still have that board game we used to play? The one with the wooden dice? I blinked, surprised. Parcheesi? Yeah, that one. I stepped back and waved him in. Top shelf of the linen closet. You remember the rules? He grinned. Sort of. We sat at my small kitchen table, knees bumping occasionally, the board between us. I lit a candle, not for atmosphere, but for warmth. The carriage house cools quickly in October. He rolled first, and we played without much talking. Just the sound of dice on wood, pieces moving in small victories. Midway through the game, he looked up. Things are tense at home. I nodded. I can imagine. Mom's trying. Dad, not so much. I said nothing. Oliver stared at the board. I think he feels humiliated, like living here, paying you rent. It's bruised something in him. Pride can swell until it makes seeing hard, I said. Your father's not the first man to mistake control for dignity. He moved a piece. Do you think they'll split up? I don't know, I said. But I think whatever happens, you'll be okay. He looked surprised. You're stronger than you think, I added. He leaned back, stretched his arms. I used to think you were just, old. I laughed. No offense, he said quickly, but not someone with rules. You just said yes to everything. I said yes because I thought that's what love was. And now? Now I think love without limits turns you into a ghost. He was quiet for a long time. When he won the game, he didn't gloat, just smiled, the soft kind that doesn't ask for praise. As he stood to leave, I handed him a small, cloth-wrapped package. What's this? He asked. An old camera. Walter's. Film kind. Still works. He unwrapped it carefully, eyes wide. For me? Yes, but only if you promise not to sell it. I won't, he said quickly. This is amazing. There's something about slowing down, I said. Taking one picture at a time makes you see things differently. He looked up at me, really looked. Thanks, Grandma. He left just before sunset. The camera held like something sacred. That night, I stood at my window, watching the lights flicker in the main house. No shouting tonight, just movement. Shadows passing behind curtains. Life continuing. My phone buzzed once. A message from Oliver. Took my first photo. It was of your porch light. Looked peaceful. Rent was late again. Not by much. 3 days this time, but no note, no heads up. Just silence. The kind that expects forgiveness without asking for it. I waited until day 5, then printed another copy of the lease, highlighted the clause again, and walked it over myself. Diane answered the door. Hair unbrushed, phone in hand, tired in a way that clings to the edges of your face. I know, she said, before I could speak. I know we're late. We'll get it to you by Friday. I'm charging the late fee, I said. She winced. Mom, it's in the lease. She took the paper with a deep sigh. It's just, everything's tight right now. I didn't answer. She looked at me, eyes not angry, just worn. I'm not asking for a free ride. I'm just asking for some grace. This is grace, I said. Because 4 years ago, I would have paid the bill myself, apologized for making you feel uncomfortable, and left groceries on the porch. She blinked. This, I said, motioning to the paper between us. This is me respecting you enough to let you own your mistakes and your recovery. She didn't argue, just nodded slowly and closed the door. Friday came. The envelope arrived. Full amount plus the late fee. Progress doesn't always announce itself. That weekend, Casey appeared again. Dirty knees, runny nose, eyes bright. I finished the book, he said. What book? The one you gave me, the wizard one, with the tree that talks. I smiled. And? It was awesome. I handed him a second book. No ribbon, no note, just a gesture. His face lit up. Can I come help in the garden again? You can, I said, but only if you ask your mother first. He frowned. Why? Because I'm not here to be the secret passage out of responsibility. He thought about that longer than I expected, then nodded. Okay, I will. He returned 20 minutes later with a crooked thumbs up. We planted fall bulbs in silence, hands in dirt, sun on our backs. Later that day, Diane sent a text. Thanks for today. I know I don't say it often, but I notice. I'm trying. I didn't reply. Not because I was cold, but because I believed her. And sometimes belief is the loudest reply. That evening, I opened my journal. Wrote only 5 words. This is what healing feels like. Todd called, for the first time in nearly a year. Hey, Ma, he said, voice soft, unsure. Got your card. I'd sent it 2 weeks ago, just a small note tucked inside a birthday card. No money, no pressure, just thinking of you. The tomatoes came in late this year. Wasn't expecting it, he added. Guess I thought you forgot me. I never forgot you, I said. I just got tired of reaching into a silence that didn't reach back. He was quiet for a beat. Fair. We talked for 17 minutes. About nothing. Weather in Phoenix, a new cat he'd rescued, his neighbor's obsession with lawn ornaments, and then, as if checking the temperature of the water, Diane still bleeding you dry? I smiled. Not anymore. That got a low whistle. Didn't think you had it in you. Neither did I said. Well, he cleared his throat. Good for you, Ma. When we hung up, I sat with that phrase longer than I expected. Good for you, Ma. Not pity, not guilt, not obligation, just respect. That evening, Diane knocked, not tense, not performing, just present. Do you want to come over for dinner? She asked. The boys are making tacos. Oliver says he wants to show you his photo album. I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to go, but because part of me still braced for strings I couldn't see. No catch, she added. Just dinner, and a chair that's always been yours. I followed her into the main house. It smelled like cumin and burnt tortilla edges. Laughter from the kitchen. Alex stirring something at the stove, apron over his t-shirt. He gave me a nod. Not warm, but not cold. Hey, June. Alex? Oliver appeared with a thick photo album, clearly handmade. I printed them myself. Used your camera. He laid it open on the table. Black and white photos, grainy and imperfect, but full of life. My porch light, a tomato split on the vine, Casey sleeping on the couch, book open on his chest. Diane laughing mid-yell at the boys, even one of me, watering the herbs unaware, framed by the doorway. These are good, I said, and I meant it. They're real, he said. Dinner was simple. Talk was light. No one asked for anything. When I stood to leave, Diane walked me to the door. Thanks for coming, she said. I paused. You're doing better. We're trying, she said. Some days are still messy. Messy's fine, I said. Messy means you're in the middle of change. As I walked back to the carriage house, porch light glowing ahead, I felt it again. Not triumph, not relief, just steadiness. Like a puzzle piece that had finally stopped trying to fit where it didn't belong. The garden bloomed slower this year. Maybe it was the cooler spring. Maybe the soil needed more time to recover. Or maybe, just maybe, things take the time they're meant to when no one rushes them. I didn't mind. Every morning, I walked the narrow path from the carriage house to the edge of the fence, checked on the beans, watered the lavender, whispered to the tomatoes. No one watching, no one needing, just me and the green things that didn't ask for anything but sunlight and patience. In the main house, life had found a rhythm. Diane still missed rent once, but left a note taped to my door the same day, along with a partial payment and a new plant for my windowsill. Casey visited often, usually with questions about bugs or soil or what to do when your brother keeps stealing your charger. Alex stayed distant. Polite, still stiff, still bruised. But I saw him fix the porch step without being asked. I saw him carry groceries in for Diane without making a show of it. Sometimes growth isn't an apology. It's the quiet return of decency. One Sunday morning, Oliver came with coffee. Black, no sugar, he said, handing it to me like a peace offering. You remembered? He sat on the porch rail. I got into the photography program, the one in the city. That's wonderful, I said. It's not a full scholarship, he added, but I'm going to work part-time. I don't want Mom to cover it all. I nodded. And you're not asking me either. He smiled. I'm asking you to come to the exhibition, in spring. I reached for his hand and squeezed. I'll be there. He stood to leave, but then paused. You know, I used to think you were just old, like quietly fading. Now I think you're just finally loud in the right way. I laughed. Careful, I might get a tattoo next. He grinned. Do it. I'll take your picture. After he left, I sat with his words, loud in the right way. I hadn't raised my voice in months, but my silence had changed shape. It wasn't resignation anymore. It was choice. It was boundary. It was a quiet kind of thunder. A few weeks later, Todd sent me a package. Inside, a book on native gardening, a photo of him with his new cat, and a note that read, "Trying to be better. Starting with remembering you like things that grow." I framed it. That winter, Diane asked if she could plant vegetables with me come spring. She brought a notebook, made plans. Real plans, asked questions, listened. When we worked side by side in early March, hands in the soil, she told me, I used to think you were withholding, but now I see you were just tired of being empty. I didn't answer. I just passed her the trowel. One evening, as the sky melted into pink, I stood at the edge of the garden and looked at my house, my real house, the carriage house, the one I'd chosen. Lights warm, kettle on, journal open, not grand, not rich, but mine. I had not been cruel. I had not abandoned anyone. I had chosen myself, and by doing so, I gave them a chance to choose better too. Sometimes, freedom isn't a door swinging open. It's a slow walk back to yourself. And if you've ever felt used, erased, or quietly taken for granted, know this. The moment you say no doesn't make you unkind. It makes you visible. Let them call you cold. Let them say you've changed. You have. And that is your victory. If this story touched something in you, share it. Leave a comment. Let another woman know she's not alone in choosing herself.